What are we needing?
Well, hello, Jerry.
Hello there, Gary, and congratulations on getting another 4 years of public servanthood.
Wow, that's great. And I heard it was unanimous, so I was surprised to get your support.
Well, there was some coercion there.
All right, Andy, I just resent that agenda. Does anybody, oh, there's a Joy. Hi there. Does anybody else need the agenda resent to them? I sent it last week, but I can always send it out real quick.
There it is.
Okay, well, we have everybody on. Again, Bill Ganger is not able to join us today, but we have everybody else on, and Chair Harrington is our guest. I know Sia Lindstrom is going to try to jump on as well, so if she gets on later, we can certainly hear from her at the end of the meeting. So Gary, are you ready to begin and we can start recording and start the PowerPoint?
You bet. Marcus, Lisa, we're ready to go. It's 4:31 or 4:32 now, and this is the Fair Board meeting for February 3rd, 2021. We'll have a call to order, and just like Leah had said, the only member that is not here right now is Bill Ganger. Everybody else is present. At this time, we do have oral communications, and if there is anybody that would like to address the board, they're allowed 2 minutes for this period. We do have a second period at the end of the agenda. If you'd like to speak a little bit longer, you may do so. Lisa, Marcus, do we have anybody that is called in?
There are 3 members of the public that are viewing. No actual call-ins currently.
Okay, well, if they decide they would like to talk, then they can have the second period. At this time, we do have the approval of the minutes from October 2020. So it's been a while since we've met, but we do have those minutes, and if anybody needs to peruse them, I know Andy, you just got them. I'd like to take a quick look, and if we can get a motion to pass these meetings and second it, then we'll go ahead.
I've looked at them, so I'm good with them. I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a second. Okay, we do have a second in there. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any negatives? Okay, right on. Reports. The first one will be approval of October, November, and December financial reports for 2021.
Go ahead and advance the slides, Marcus, to the financial approval. Keep going. Next one. There you go. So you should all have the financials in the packet that I sent to you. Nothing real big to report. We haven't had much for activity other than just a few of the regular bills that we need to pay and the staffing costs for the minimal staffing that we have, and just the revenue that comes in from TLT, the minimal revenue that comes in from TLT. Any questions on that at all?
Of course, Leah. Could I ask a couple?
Of course.
You'd be unhappy if I didn't have questions, wouldn't
Well,
you?
it would be shocking.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So obviously our TLT revenue is significantly down from budget. But so is our expenses. If we go to the bottom line, we are actually a positive 96 grand right now. But basically almost 50% of our costs are the interdepartmental charge. So is that based on budgeted revenue, or what is that number based on?
Indirect charges are based upon the expenses from the prior county expenses in the prior fiscal year. So we get, that is assessed upon how many contracts that the county processes for us, how many checks the county processes for us. It's a percentage of our IT services, our legal support services. It's all the things that the county provides to us, and it's a percentage of that amount of work that they're doing for the fair and the Fair Board.
Okay, but is that pertinent to this particular year, since we didn't have a fair and didn't incur all those expenses. I mean, is that still a pertinent number? I mean, I'm just, all I'm doing is moving numbers from one pocket to another. I get that, it's interdepartmental, but when we're talking about our budget, it is important. So
we get assessed that no matter what. So if Sia was on the line, she would tell you that I have, and if Jack, our CFO, was on the line, they would tell you that I've been crying a river about our county indirect charges across our facility spectrum. So the West Side Commons, even though it is not open, is being charged a very large indirect charges amount, even though it's not open. The fairgrounds itself in the operations side is being charged, as well as the fair board. So nobody gets to escape those charges. They are based upon the prior fiscal year's transactions, and that's how they assess that. And so I'm hopeful, and I've talked to our CFO Jack Lang about it, is our transactions and usage should be significantly down for next year based upon the pandemic. So those numbers should go down. I just saw some of those numbers just recently, and they are slightly down, and I'm asking for another look at that right now. But just because we are not using the amount of financial and services that we normally use, so those charges should come down. But we still are using HR, we are still using IT, just not to the same level. So I know that the county is probably talking about indirect charges. I know it was brought up in our department director meeting today. So you're not the only one bringing up these questions about indirect. I hope that is a very roundabout way of saying those charges are going to stay there and they're not going away.
No, and I completely understand. I mean, we still have overhead. You know, when I talk about we talk about the county and all of these expenses that we have to allocate to the users. I get that. So I guess I can see that. Looking ahead though, if they truly are using the look back as to how much of these services we use in the previous year, next year's ours is going to significantly go down, and when we're actually going to use a normal year's amount of services. So it seems everything's a little whacked out, but we can talk about that maybe as we get into the budget for 21-22, which is coming up on the agenda. So I get that.
Yeah, you'll see that
Leah, did we
charges
incur any
are slightly reduced. They're not significantly reduced as a projection for the next year.
I think I was overstepping you, Leah. Leah, did we get any charges incurred when when our property was used for community shelter?
For the what?
For the community sheltering?
No, no. So in fact, they paid the fairgrounds for the usage. So when we were operating Safe Sleep Village out of the Cloverleaf building, the county Health and Human Services paid us rent for that.
Okay.
But we don't incur any indirect charges based upon activities or events that occur on the fairgrounds.
Does the same thing
Okay.
apply to the using the exhibit center as courtrooms?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So Leah, where is that revenue on your monthly financial report?
Is not on this my financial report because the fair board does not get revenue from rentals of the facility. So
that's right.
different-
Okay.
That is a different set of financials for the fairgrounds and the event center that is not under the auspices of the fair board.
Yeah, I'll see that on when I look at the other set of financials. Okay. So, and I think these financials are interestingly different than normal. So when we get to another part of the agenda and we're talking about the 2021 fair possibilities, when we get to the 21-22 budget stuff, I'm just wondering from a projection standpoint, what these monthly financials would look like if we would actually go in and modify them to budget for a 21 fair where we are going to incur expenses prior to the June 30, 21 year end. So you know how that works because we're always doing overlaps and things like that. But I'd kind of like to see a snapshot of what our budget would look like, and we can call it something else because we can't change the budget at this point. But what this financial projection would look like through June 30, with the assumption that we're going to have a fair of some sort, and those expenses are going to land in this current fiscal year. So yeah, I'm just trying to, it's almost like apples and oranges, but
Yeah,
anyway.
but I know what you're saying, and that is accurate, but we need to have, that's all going to be dependent on the kind of fair that we have. I do not, and you're going to hear me talk about this here in the next few slides, is I do not believe that we are going to have a normal 2021 fair. We might have a modified version of that, and we've got some options to look at. So, but we do know that under normal circumstances, we incur some costs before in the prior fiscal year, mostly for advertising. And depending on the type of fair we have, that may not occur in the current fiscal year. So we've got to actually make some decisions. So we might not be able to really have an accurate snapshot until we get a little bit further down the road.
Okay, yeah, I understand. It is complex, and so I'll wait till we get into the conversations for the 21-22 budget and for what the July 21 fair will look like based on what you're predicting. So
Great.
Thank you for that. No more questions.
Okay.
Any further discussion of the financials? Can we get an approval of the financials?
You make a motion, we approve the financials.
We get a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
Great. Okay, with that, the reports are approved in here. And with that, do we have any 4-H update?
Next slide, please, Lisa and Marcus. And is Pat Willis on? Can you make Pat Willis a panelist, please, so he can give us his report?
Hey, Mr. President, you know you didn't vote on that last motion.
Oh, I didn't vote on it. Okay, can I get a vote of the financials? Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Aye.
Anybody disapproving it? Okay, it's approved. Maybe that means you ought to step up, Andy.
No. You're doing fine, Gary.
I take it that we don't have Pat. Is that correct, Leah?
No,
I'm
there it
I'm
is.
here. I just,
Oh, there he is.
It
oh,
takes-
good. Oh, yes.
You got him on. I
This
can
is
see him now.
different. Yeah, this is a little unique for Zoom, how this is going, because half webinar, half Zoom, so.
Well, it's
happy-
interesting to see you Zoom, Pat.
Yes, I'm quite handsome on air like this. Happy New Year, everybody. So it's good to see you, at least in 2 dimensions. So, well, 4-H is still alive and well. Everything's moving at a different pace across the state too. You know, some enrollment is lower, as everybody expects. Everything we are doing is virtual, so no face-to-face programs at all. That's been in Washington County since last March. So I know our volunteers and partners all want to, get moving and doing things, but we're just going with the flow and following what the Oregon Health Authority and OSU set as the standard. So, so all programs are virtual, no face-to-face programming. We try to have lots of communication with our volunteers and our kids. We send out a Monday update, 1-pager every week. Tonight we have our first Wednesday meeting. We do a meeting every first Wednesday, just to kind of keep the ball rolling and providing lots of opportunities for our clubs to still do things, but they still have to do it remotely too by Zoom. And so it's a tough time. We are meeting with the superintendents next Wednesday. Leah's going to be there too, to kind of just start forecasting the future with that too, because they're the ones who really put together the contests and the events and all kind of help organize so much of that. It's but we don't know what the fair is going to be. So we are planning on doing everything virtual. If we're able to meet on site, fantastic. We got that one nailed. But we need to be able to move forward if we can't be on site too. So it's difficult for sure. See, other kind of quick updates here. Horse fairs, they're still trying to work on their plans too. We met with Leah yesterday and kind of discussed some plans. And so this year, if fair can happen the 29th, 30th, 31st, and the 1st, whatever those in July there, horse fair will be sometime before that and up to the 29th. And so we'll need to kind of schedule what that means if it's on site too. So, and then the arena has great panels and all that, but no footing in there. So we'll need to, work on that to see what that means and coordinate with Leah and Albert and whoever to make sure they have an arena to work from. So, but that we're still in process with that too. Interestingly, this on February 13th, the Washington County Livestock Association, they're planning on doing a beef weigh-in on that day. And we just found out about this a few days ago. It's allowed by the health department and Oregon Health Authority for having 50 people or less on the fairgrounds. So let me know if I'm going off base with any of this, Leah.
That's okay.
And so I know they're organizing to do like pre-registration, one parent per child to bring in their steer. They're going to line it up, social distancing, masks. They'll have to do tracking and tracing, all that kind of thing. But then OSU, we've been meeting with, as soon as we found out, meeting with my supervisor, Angela, our state 4-H leader, Marilyn Lesmeister, the director of extension, Anita, and because this goes beyond what they're comfortable with right now to doing that. But they're getting the same concerns from other counties, and not just 4-H, but in Master Gardeners, the ag community, forest, to be able to be in an open setting of 50 people or less, meeting all these protocols. So they're meeting tonight and tomorrow to help come up with guidelines that fulfill the community need and the safety need too. So we will find out hopefully by the end of this week. But the intent is to keep it safe as possible, but we still need to be able to move forward in a safe fashion. And
one thing that I can add to that, Pat, I met with our livestock auction people virtually yesterday after we met. Okay. And the one thing that that the OHA encourages and that I have highly encouraged our auction committee to do for this weigh-in. And first of all, there's not even 50 kids to weigh in. So we would never even have 50 kids. It's more like 20. Mm-hmm. But I've asked them to set up time slots and not have them overlap, so that so one kid and the one parent would show up with their livestock trailer, unload the cow, put it on the scale, put it back on the trailer. They would leave. The 3 or 4 committee members that would be working would sanitize everything and then let the next trailer with animal, child, and parent in. So so they would do time slot assignments for that. So just to make it so there's even less people on site at any one time.
Yeah, and that's really good to hear. That's what we were just having the conversation earlier today with OSU. And everybody wants to make these things happen underneath this umbrella of COVID. The other part that OSU is concerned about is providing appropriate accommodation. If there is a family that has a steer and they have an adult at home who has concerns about asthma, whatever it is, they may want to say, I'm not going there.
They are making those accommodations for families who do not feel comfortable. They will be providing other options where it sounds like maybe they would take a scale out to them and do some things. They've got some other accommodations that they are working on.
Oh, good. That's, I'm glad you mentioned that because we didn't talk about that yesterday after yeah. Oh, that's good because it's, we have to do that too. And see that.
I do just want to point out that I'm very proud of the auction committee. The auction committee has been known over the years to kind of be a little bit of a wild card in doing things and not always following the rules that the fair board and the staff set for them. And the fact that they are going over and above and they really are rallying to make sure that they are setting up a safe environment so their kids can weigh their animals in to be ready for an auction this coming July. They've done a fantastic job.
Yeah, they really have. It's all volunteer, you know, and Natalie and Jen, they're so good about this. They want to make sure the kids have the best experience possible. Interestingly, last year, they were able to do the beef weigh-in because it just happened before all the protocols came. But, you know, swine, goats, lambs, others, they couldn't do the first weigh-in. So it can happen without a weigh-in. It's just a different process too. We want to make life as normal as possible for kids and families. So, and I guess outside of that, there's two things I miss a lot. I've mentioned this to you before. I really like being at the fair because my job at the fair is walking around. That's what I do. I walk around and talk, you know, and I talk. That's basically it. Because by the time it starts, it's full speed. And Dairy Women's Ice Cream. So there you go. Any questions or thoughts?
And we think that walking around for you and talking and being nice is abnormal. Come on, we know. That's your mainstay.
No,
That's what you do,
well,
buddy.
Really, yeah. You manage by walking around. Is what you do. So yeah. So
I've been accused of that myself, but no, you do a great job, and we all miss that. So
yeah, no, it's Leah and I have talked a lot about this. Likelihood of us having any kind of normal fair this summer is slim to none, but we need to do the best we can with what is available for us to do. So,
yeah.
and Leah's been, I'm so sorry about your accident, but you've been really good about working with us and sharing information. So it's been really good. So.
Well, perfect, Pat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move.
Pat
Move
did
on.
just mention that I had an accident. I know there's a couple of you on the line that don't know that I was in a fairly serious car accident a few weeks ago. But so if I wiggle around, it's because my ribs are broken and I get uncomfortable, but I am doing better. So I know several of you have asked. And next slide, please, Lisa and Marcus.
This will be for the educational update. And I know Bob is on it too. And I know we got an email from Gene Gullickson because we do have another Zoom meeting to talk about the educational fair or the educational fund update. We'll be able to get that done. And that's going to be next week on February 11th. Bob, do you have anything additional on the fund?
No, I don't have anything additional to add other than we're going to have that meeting and everything's pretty much on hold till we get going again, but we do have to have a meeting and we can do it by Zoom to keep our 501c3 status.
And along with that, I would assume, Leah, there is no fact report.
Next slide. And no, there is not a fact report this time. We are getting a fact meeting scheduled hopefully for early next month to get a meeting on the books for the new year with our facts. So be watching out for that information. And next slide, please.
Okay, we'll move into reports. We'll move into the County Fair 2021, and we'll start off with the staffing update.
All right, next slide, please, Lisa. So staff update. This is literally the exact same slide from our last meeting. Nothing has changed whatsoever since October when it comes to staffing. So again, 2 staff remain full-time, myself and Albert. Lisa, our sales and marketing person, is with us 2 days a week, although she is working for us a little bit today. So she'll have to flex out some time for the CAO's office later. And then we have Carol 1 day a week. Julie, who is, really primarily a fair board staff, she is working full-time in housing. Will, our contract administrator, is working full-time in housing, and Kent, Colton, and Jeff are working for county facilities. I do want to just point out, though, Albert is not always 100% alone. County facilities, when Albert does need a hand for something that he just needs some backup on, they have been great about sending out county facility staff to help Albert, because there are just times where it's not safe for him to do something alone. So thank you to Martin Granum and the facility staff for really helping us out when we need to. Next slide, please, Lisa. So can we go right into what our risk level and operating requirements are? So this is the last time we met, we were in phases. So now we are in risk levels, which is different than phasing. I heard today that Washington County may be moving into the high risk level here in the next week or two, which is great news. The fact that we're heading in a different direction is fantastic. I really hope that that does work for us, which means that we would be in the high risk level. Obviously, indoor and outdoor maximum capacities at the high risk level is not great, and that those risk levels could potentially last until spring, maybe even early summer. Once we hit moderate or low risk levels, that's when we predict that we will be able to start returning to public events, small events at the fairgrounds, small events at the Wingspan. While those numbers aren't very much, at least 150 people outside, small activities could occur. Once we get to the low risk level, which is really what we're looking forward to, is our indoor capacity is at 50%, which for the event center would be a little over 2,000 people, and the Cloverleaf a little over 100 people. However, the outdoor maximum capacity is 300 in this low risk level. So I like to point out that this is kind of a funky disparity that is going on with OHA. The Oregon Fairs Association is really working very closely with the Oregon Health Authority to work on that outdoor maximum capacity. The fact that we could have 2,000 people in the event center, but only 300 people outside on 100 acres is a little funky. And they did acknowledge that that is something that needs to be adjusted. So they did not commit to when they would take another look at that and when that might possibly get adjusted. So we would just be dependent on when that happens. And that we may not be able to reach that risk level until summer or fall. So any questions on the risk levels before Andy, go ahead.
I heard that the state fair is actually having a fair this year. How are they managing to do it?
So I'm on the State Fair board, and they're not. So they are planning for a fair, hoping that things will be back to normal. The fair board for the state, it's called the State Fair Council, and we have our board meetings, and we have these very frank conversations about that. The messaging to the public is very hopeful that we will have this big return to the Oregon State Fair, but we know that it's probably not going to be a full state fair. They booked a lot of concerts that they're going to probably have to either significantly reduce or cancel altogether. So, but there is a lot of reason to be very hopeful when it comes to public messaging, and it's something we need to talk about as well. But while knowing that the likelihood of having a full event is slim, and at least the state fair is at the end of August, beginning of September, so they might have a little bit more opportunity than we have. But until numbers are significantly changed, they wouldn't be able to do it at the low risk level either. Any other questions? All right, next slide, please. So this is just a very quick FYI. These are the types of things that we need to comply with if we're having any type of event, no matter the risk level. So if we do get into low risk level and we are able to hold some sort of small modified version of a fair, there's a lot of things that we still have to comply with, such as eating and drinking establishment and retail store guidelines because of food and beverage and the shopping aspect of the fair. Obviously, frequent cleaning and sanitizing would be a given, but we'd have to stagger arrival and departure times. We would ask our fair guests to register and for their attendance online in advance, and restrict seating, prohibit congregating. So there would be a lot of things that we would need to discuss as we move forward, because these kinds of things could limit our profitability and our financial feasibility. So these are all things we need to keep top of mind as we're moving forward with our plans.
I just want you to all know that I have been practicing safe pancake flipping.
Glad to hear it.
Just in case it comes up, I'm ready.
Good. All right, next slide, please. So programming, again, I want to really reinforce the message. I don't want anybody to be surprised that I am saying this later or this comes to fruition. We are very unlikely to have a normal county fair in the summer of 2021, even if it's a 4-day. Obviously, we already voted to have not a 10-day fair, but to go back to a 4-day. But even then, that is very likely not going to be what our normal 4-day fair looked like back in 2019. The requirements will be dependent on what OHA dictates to us later in the spring. But I do want to talk about some modified fair options to consider. And these are all things that, even though it's just me, Albert, and Lisa, these are all the things that we're talking about. And a lot of things I'm talking about with Pat Willis and our partners as we're moving forward and starting to talk about what kind of fair we could possibly have. So we could have a small in-person fair limited to 300 attendees scheduled into 2-hour increments over the course of 3 or 4 days. Have 300 people make a reservation, they come in, they go to the Dairy Woman's ice cream, they get to see the animals, they get to see the kids, they get to see some of the aspects of the fair that we have, such as limited entertainment, limited vendors. And then we would clear them all out, sanitize everything, and then let the next group in. This is what fairs are doing right now on the East Coast. There's some smaller fairs that are occurring. They're like in Florida, they just had a mini fair. And these are the things that they're doing on the East Coast, and for fairs that are allowed to open. They're doing things that are a little bit different, but allowing some type of fair experience. One thing that could happen is that open class home arts could return. We talked about that returning when the event center opened, and having people enter their art in advance, and then have the people that come to see the fair to look at those in a one-way traffic pattern. Walking by the art exhibits would be a fun thing for people, we believe. And then obviously the priority would be our 4-H and FFA kids. They didn't get a fair last year. If the state fair is going to happen in some sort of fashion, they too are going to focus on kids. And so we would want to make sure our 4-H and FFA kids are qualified to attend a state fair if they are doing that as well. We would want to make sure that our kids, so that is the one thing that Pat and I talked a lot about. We've been talking about it for months, but our commitment to ensuring that our 4-H and FFA kids have some ability to have a fair to qualify for them for the state fair, and really just get a little bit of fair experience back in. The other options are parking lot or drive-through fairs, where we've got fair food set up in the parking lot. People could drive through, much like going to McDonald's, look at animal viewing as they drive by, have music playing. We could also just do only a livestock show for 4-H and FFA kids and their families, or we can do a combination of above, but a lot of it is just going to be dependent on the financial situation, on really what we believe that is going to cost us, and what those numbers are going to be from OHA. Any questions on that? Probably not a big surprise. These are also things that we're seeing in California right now. They're doing a lot of parking lot fairs. So that is something we're seeing. It's the fair food. You drive through the fair food, then you drive through a little area where you see some farm animals, and there's somebody strumming a guitar as you kind of almost like driving through like zoo lights. You drive through a limited drive-through fair. And while that's not the type of fair we want to offer, if that's something that we need to do to be safe and bring some type of experience back to our community, I think that's something we should look at. So.
Leo,
How much financial liability is there with the carnival and the limited entertainment and vendors?
So the financial limit, the financial liability for all of those is, entertainment costs money, regardless of how many people we have. Their daily rate is their daily rate. It's why I'm saying no concerts, because if we're going to have a concert, they're going to still charge $100,000 for their concert, even if we can only have 200 people watch it. So there's just going to have to be some looking at, what kind of entertainment can we have? Is there local entertainment that would cost less rather than bringing the typical entertainment that comes off the fair circuit? But really, we even talked about from a livestock show standpoint. Normally, for the livestock shows, we bring in kind of expert judges from outside of the area. We might need to utilize local volunteer judges to judge the kids' exhibits and animals. So there's just some things that we're going to have to look at and get financially creative. Did somebody else have a question?
Well, I was going to ask one. It was very similar to David's. It was more about the finances of it. It seems as though if you open up to almost any of those, it starts a cascading effect of more expenses.
It does.
And so, you know, I would think that we would want to keep it, since we're not in the business of losing money, we would want to keep it to something like just the livestock show only, so that the youth can still participate and show at the state fair. But anything beyond that, we're starting to escalate exponentially in costs.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. Just bringing back staffing, having janitorial and sanitizing and extra utilities, it does. It's an absolute cascade effect. Joy, did you have a question?
Yeah, and I just had a comment actually. So I went through the Lightopia that was like, you know, organized, and that was one of the best programming we've ever had in like Hillsborough. I loved it. Like, you know, of course it wasn't like that long, but like, you know, the 10 minutes ride was like really nice. And then the response that the people had shown was like tremendous, right, for it. So I think like the drive-through is something that we could definitely think, like, instead of totally like canceling it, have some kind of a drive-through, like you said, like combinations, right? So we could play and then at least have some sort of programming for the community to enjoy during summer, right? That would be fantastic.
I agree. I did attend that Lightopia event, and you're right. Just even though it was only a 10-minute drive-through, the excitement of getting to actually go out in the world and do some sort of an event was fantastic. And I had a lot of friends and family that had the same comment. So that's what kind of really made that top of mind. And the other thing that we really need to do, and it's why I really like that drive-through parking lot and maybe livestock show only possibilities, is it does keep the fair top of mind. We do need to remember that, you know, keeping the community reminded that we're still here and we're coming back and that we missed them all and we're looking forward to a return in the future post-pandemic is just that kind of top of mind thing that we should be thinking about as well.
Yeah. So one other comment I had is like, you know, so one is just making people come to the fair and enjoy it, right? The other aspect of it, I was just thinking like, now what if we could talk with Intel and then have like a drone show, like for 3 days in the evening. So you're not actually attracting people, but also like people can view from their homes, like, you know, at least like people in and around Hillsborough, they should be able to see it. But again, I don't know the logistics, but at least some sort of a display where like, it's not like an air show, but it's the drone show, which is like 30 minutes or whatever, right? But still some sort of an entertainment during summer for people to enjoy from the comfort of their homes, right?
Yeah, that's a great idea. If you know anybody, please send them my way.
Okay, yeah, I will.
Great. All right, anything else on this before we move on? All right, next slide, please. All right, so here's the staff recommendation. We talked about this at our last meeting. I'm going to ask that you approve a budget for a normal 4-day fair with additional features such as physical distancing, sanitization, no concerts, just in case a full fair is allowed. I know that a full fair is not going to be allowed, but just having that budget allocation in the event that we can, it also really gives the public hope that, you know, we are working diligently towards a return to the fair, and that if we can, we will put together a fair for them, but that it gives us the ability to have expenditure authority in the event that we need to. Then obviously, but that does not mean that we would expend or generate any of that revenue. This is just almost a placeholder. It gives us the budget authority, but then we would continue. Sorry, hold on. My dog, I've got somebody at the door. Mom, just grab him and take him, please. Sorry. Working at home. So we will obviously continue to work on these programming models and associated budgets. So just what I was talking about, what is it going to cost for us to do these things? What are the cascading effects? So we will put together budgets. So when we come back and meet with you in April and again in May, and we're asking you to consider these alternative fair options, they'll have associated budgets with them. So then we will be working off that modified budget at that time and instead. And obviously, we will monitor and keep the board updated on all the OHA requirements that may impact our planning and any financial feasibility. And at our May meeting, you would approve the final fair plan and modified budget.
Okay, so the May meeting would be the trigger point. You wouldn't move forward with the 4-day fair except for the budget, unless given the go-ahead in May. Is
Correct.
that correct? Okay.
Is it, Lee, is that enough time? I mean, the go ahead in May, it seems to me like last year, when we were thinking we were gonna have to cancel the fair and we had contracts that we had to negotiate, didn't all that have to be done by the 1st of May?
So the difference there was we already had contracts in place, and if we hadn't canceled, it would have triggered payments to those contractors. So we're a little bit in the reverse. So we don't have contracts in place, but the limited fair that I believe we're going to have, we'll still be planning on it. We're already talking to some vendors. We're talking to our livestock folks. We're talking to our food vendors, and getting contracts for them, after that May trigger point is not going to be difficult for us to do. If we were planning a full normal 4-day fair, yeah, trying to do it from May forward would be very difficult, but working on a very limited budget with the limited options that we just talked about is not going to be difficult from a May 1 standpoint.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Okay. Normally when I make a staff recommendation, somebody approves it.
Make a motion, we approve the staff recommendation.
I will second that.
Okay, we have approval of the recommendation. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody against? Seeing none, staff recommendation is approved.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you. And staff will continue to walk this plan, and we will keep you apprised as we move forward. Next slide, please, Lisa. All right,
Okay,
board
we got
elections.
to elect every year. We elect two personnel from the board. We elect a president and a vice president. The terms are for only 1 year. Secretary position, I assume it's still going to be Julie, even though she's on loan. Is that correct?
So normally it's myself is the secretary, and then I designate a staff person to do that, and I am currently designating it to myself. I'm serving as secretary at the moment.
Okay, well, Sia, did you hear that? We have to put that in her evaluation. Okay, then we might as well go ahead. We'll start with president. Anybody want to nominate anybody for president?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate, I don't think we should, in this pandemic year, we ought to make any changes from where we are. I think I really honestly feel we have the right people in place for everything that we're facing. So I'd make a motion that we keep the board just exactly like it is. Unless somebody has another.
Do you need 2 motions for both positions, or can you do it in 1 motion?
I assume right now, if you're going to do it in one, we can put it in just one motion.
Well, before you take a second, let me weigh in here. I've been very honored to be the vice president for the last, what's it been, year or two, something like that. And there's always the presumption that when you're vice president that you may eventually be president. I'm thankful that Gary is remaining as our president, at least if he's elected tonight. But my time has been going in a different direction. I've become very involved in State Farm Bureau. I represent both Washington and Columbia County on the state board of directors. And I'm not sure that I will ever be able to serve as president of this organization. So if I'm blocking a position, that would be better to go to somebody else who has an interest in president eventually. I would step down. Otherwise, I'm more than willing to serve as vice president with the understanding that I probably will not be able to ascend to the president's position.
Okay, with all that information, what are your choices?
Well, if there's nobody else who raises their hand for vice president, I will go ahead and second the motion.
I don't think anybody's gonna speak up, Andy.
Yeah, I don't see anybody jumping for joy here saying they want this. Well, I thank everybody for their understanding. I just didn't want to let anybody down and lead them on to believe that that I was going to be able to fulfill the obligations as president later on.
Okay, then, seeing that, I assume that the president will be held by Gary Seidel and the vice president will be held by Andy Dyke.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's what you were asking. Yes, I'm sorry. I should have clarified.
Yeah.
Well, I think Bob made it pretty clear that we would stay with the same slate.
Any discussion? Okay, any approval of the motion that we stay the same for the president and the vice president? I see approval by everybody, or is that Jerry raising your hand as a question? No, he's approving it.
I'm approving it. I don't qualify for any of those.
I'm approving it.
Okay.
Approved.
Approved.
Okay, seeing no disapproval on this, the positions remain the same. So elections are taken care of. All right, moving on to proposed fiscal year 2021-2022 budget.
So Leah, before you jump in there, I do want to echo what Bob just said. It's the board is functioning really, really well. Gary, you're doing a great job as chair. I'm glad that you're going to stay in there for another year because obviously it's not going to be a normal year. Andy, we always appreciate your institutional knowledge and certainly your history on the fair board. So I think that was a great motion. Bob, thank you for doing that. And Gary and Andy, thank you very much for your commitment to the fair. It's we need it. So thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry.
Yes, from a staff perspective, thank you all. You have all been incredibly supportive during this rough year, and I appreciate it moving forward and having this very great board with lots of experience as we head into what is hopefully a better year on the future. We really appreciate all of your work. Okay, moving into the proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget. The assumptions are that I am basing this budget on a known 4-day model. This is based on the 2019 fair actual financials. What is removed from that actual financial is concerts, and there's some adjustment for staffing. So it's mostly the actual budget from the 2019 fair. That does not mean that I'm proposing that, like I said before, that we are generating these funds or we are expending these funds. And as a reminder, this is a placeholder budget, and that I will bring back a modified budget to you in April for approval in May for the type of fair that we will be having at that time. Again, no concerts is in this. The planned new staff positions that we had planned on before remain unfilled. But one change that you're going to see is that normally, and you'll see this at the very top of the budget and in our financials under normal circumstances, the transient lodging tax comes in directly to the fair. We're making a little bit of a change. Instead of having that directed into the fair budget, you will see at the very bottom of the budget, it's going to be a subsidy instead. So instead of saying we are getting just a set amount of the TLT, at the end, we will get the amount of TLT we need. So we won't always need the amount that we've been bringing in. So it's going to be an ebb and flow. And I think this is a better way. And I think it was Jerry that suggested that we do this about a year ago. And I think that this is a really great way for us to be very clean about what our needs are. So there's going to be years where we need very little, if any, and there's going to be years where we have 108-degree weather, and there's going to be a need for a subsidy from the TLT. So that's why we're doing that this way. So that's that is a complete departure from the way we've done this in the past.
Leah, has that been run past legal counsel?
It has, and that is the way the ordinance is written for TLT is that it goes into the fairgrounds budget. And then I was fairly arbitrarily dividing it between the two programs, between the fairgrounds and the fair, because the way the wording is, it goes into the fairgrounds budget for county fair and fairgrounds operations. So I was dividing it for those. This way, that we feel that we're still meeting the intent of the ordinance.
Yeah, I knew that the the ordinance was rather vague in how much had to go for the fair and how much for the building. What I was more concerned about is just whether the ordinance specified that it had to go under the control of the fair board.
It does not.
Okay.
Well, if I could just jump in there, Andy, just for clarification, it was my understanding, and I got to tell you that trying to understand the TLT allocation is like putting together a puzzle, and they change the pieces every time you try and figure it out. Maybe a Rubik's Cube would be more from my standpoint. I have trouble with that, but I thought there was a 1% dedicated TLT to the fair.
That's correct. And
Yeah.
that's what I was referring to. It's the
Let
1%.
let me pull it up and I can read it to you exactly. Hold on.
Yeah, it's not to the fair event, Jerry. It's to
Right.
the fairgrounds. And that's
Yes.
what we're operating with is the 1%, I believe.
Okay.
So that
All right.
1% that comes in, then I divided it between the fairgrounds budget and the county fair budget.
Yep.
But let me just pull it up just for discussion's sake. Hold on.
Right. And we shouldn't refer to it as 1%. It's 1 cent, I believe.
That's true. Yeah,
That is true too.
that's a significant clarification.
That is. Well, I guess what I was, and we don't have to do this right now, Leah. I think I'm going to need to follow up anyway on some of this, but maybe, well, if you're saying that 1 cent isn't dedicated to the fair, which I thought it was, then my question's moot, okay, at this point in time. So
Here's what it says specifically. It says 1/9 shall be dedicated to the Washington County Fair for the promotion of tourism and maintenance and operation of the Washington County Fairgrounds.
And at the time that was written, we had 9 cents.
Right.
Right.
So 1/9 was 1 cent of that.
And at the time that was written, that was pre-MOU, and the Fair Board controlled the facility year-round, not just the fair event, but everything. So when in speaking with our attorney, Brad Anderson, when his interpretation is, when it says dedicated to the Washington County Fair, it means the fairgrounds, because that's, kind of that term, everybody calls it the Washington County Fair, but it's really the fairgrounds for promotion of tourism and maintenance and operations of the fairgrounds. So we felt that this still met the intent.
Yeah, I would probably challenge his definition there. I think it's ambiguous whether it's the fairgrounds or the event. I don't think there's anything in there that specifies one way or the other. But at the time, because the Fair Board operated both, there was no separation of the two. They were one and the same.
Correct. And at that time, prior to the MOU, even the financials were still separated from event and facility, but all the TLT went into the fairgrounds, and the fair event was subsidized on the end. Once we, split it up via the MOU, that's when I started splitting it into the two budgets. So this is really kind of going back to how it used to be done, where the fair event was subsidized with TLT post-event. I hope that makes sense. I know it's like clear as mud. Any more discussion on TLT? I think the good news here is that the difference is, and which is why I think this is a really interesting way to look at it, is there are times where we need more TLT than actually comes into our budget. And there are times we need less. And this gives us a little bit more flexibility in that funding.
Yeah, I'm only hesitating because that 1 cent should be our cap, essentially. I don't think other TLT should be used for the fairgrounds. I mean, that was our carve out. And as the TLT in general, countywide, grows, then the fair budget can grow.
Mhm.
I just don't like to see the TLT that's not part of the 1 cent. I don't like to see it commingled with everything else. It's a bad precedent.
All right, moving right along. So you've got my proposed budget in front of you. Again, this is based upon the 2019 Washington County Fair. This is based upon the actuals. And I mean, it's it's a placeholder budget. So I don't have a lot to say about it. This is a budget you've seen and approved in the past. It's all the typical trappings of a county fair minus the concerts. The one thing that, Jerry, I want to talk about is the indirect charges, and you'll see that on page 2 at the very bottom. So, and actually the indirect charges are going down significantly. For whatever reason, I was thinking about our other budget. So when we talk about being a year behind, we're going to go from 70,000 in indirect charges to 50,000. So there is an allocation, for that, our lack of using of county services. So again, when we move forward and we start operating again, so it's always going to be a year off. And that is my budget presentation to you, that this is a placeholder budget, and I will bring another budget to you in April.
And with that, I don't think you need a motion for that.
No, I do.
Oh, you do?
I do.
We
Make
get
a
a
motion, we
motion,
accept the proposed budget.
like Bob? Second.
Actually, I have a quick question before that.
Yes.
So Leah, so the question is like, so given that, like, you said, like with the risk levels that, like, probably like post fall is when we might enter into that lower risk, right? Is there even a possibility for a winter fair, or that's completely out of scope?
So those are things we would have to discuss. So we have a memorandum of understanding with the Board of Commissioners that the county fair occurs in the month of July. That doesn't necessarily prohibit us from going and talking to the county administration and allowing for an exception. I don't think anything is really off the table, other than the fact that once the fall begins, we do have commitments for using the facility from a rental standpoint.
Mhm.
And that is getting our rentals back operating. We've got contracts for shows to start in the event center and outdoor events to be on the fairgrounds. So that I just don't know that there would be the availability. But if we really can have nothing this summer, or something that's just so incredibly limited, I think that we could look at the opportunity of some things that, some dates that we might be able to do something and work with the Board of Commissioners on some exceptions. I think we would just need to wait and look and see what may be needed to be done. But I do appreciate that level of creative thinking.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason is like, in the event it gets approved, or like, things, probably the budget would completely differ, right, for 2021-22.
What's that?
So in the event that, like, we have a winter fair, right, pending approval from the Board of Commissioners, the budget would basically change, right? The 2021-22 budget would basically change in the event we have a winter fair, right?
We would have to work within the budget that is approved.
Oh, I see.
Because it would still be within the same fiscal year if we had a winter fair.
Okay. Cool. Thank
But that again, I love the creativity, and I don't think anything is really off the table. So as we get further down the road this spring, those are things that we can certainly discuss.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Back to you, Gary.
All right. Next slide, please.
Oh, we still have a motion.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
We have a motion on the floor. Bob, put the motion out there. Can we get a second?
I second.
Second.
Okay, thanks, Joy. All right, can we get an approval?
Aye.
No, nobody against? All right, motion's approved.
All right, next slide, please. And this is our county administrative update. And Lisa, Marcus, could you promote Sia Lindstrom, please?
I'm here, everyone. Hello. Good evening. Good to see you all. I don't have much to report. I think Leah's done a nice job of kind of summarizing where things are. I will just let you know that we are continuing to look at the financial picture for the fairgrounds and the wingspan, given especially on the fairgrounds side, some of the concerns around TLT. transient lodging tax and the impact that the obvious revenue reduction in that area is going to have. So just know the Board of Commissioners is currently going to be briefed on that, and there will be a work session coming up the end of February to look specifically at both that and the wingspan. The projection right now from our CFO, based on kind of research about what we can expect here in Oregon, he's hoping within the next 18 to 24 months, we will see a pretty good rebound in TLT. And that's all good news. So I think that is the update from the County Administrative Office. I know the chair is in the room as well. And Gary, with your indulgence, I would invite the chair if there's any other updates from the County Administrative Office of the board. And Gary, that's your indulgence as the chair, obviously, and if Chair Harrington is interested.
Yes, we would definitely love to hear from Chair Harrington.
Okay, and I just saw something from her. Thank you, Chair Harrington, for letting us know that. Just thought I'd give you that opportunity. Are there any questions for me in terms of the County Administrative Office update? Great.
All right, see you.
It's really good to see you all again. And Bob, I especially like the sunset you've got going on behind you there. It makes me
Thank you.
travel somewhere nice.
Next slide, please, Lisa. Well, other if any, but next slide after that, thank you.
All right, it's time for oral communications 2. This is the time for a member from the audience may address us. They may speak up to, actually, it used to be 5 minutes. I don't know why we had 2, but usually oral 2 gives us 5 minutes per communication, 30 minutes max. Is there anybody that would like to talk to us, Marcus?
There is one person in the attendees and they don't have their hand raised. If you are in the attendees and you want to use the raise hand feature, you can do that, or you can type in the chat. But I don't see any action as of right now.
All right, next slide, please.
All right, looks like next meeting, April 7th, and then we got a meeting May 5th.
Yep, so if you could please add these to your calendars. Lisa will get Zoom set up for these and get me the links, and I will actually send you out a calendar invitation, but if you could please hold your calendars for these dates. These are going to be very important meetings for you. We are going to, I will present you with some options in April and associated budgets, and then in May, I will be asking for you to approve one. So please mark your calendars and plan to be there.
Okay, with that, can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, second.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned.
Great to see you all. Thank you. Have a good night.
Great
Be
to see
well.
everyone.
Get well again.